On the newest episode of Common Guys, we're going to take a look at James Gunn's Superman Legacy. I think this movie, in order to be the success it needs to be, in order to reintroduce Superman to the public, even though Henry Cavill's last appearance as Superman was in Black Adam, this movie needs to get a few rules right. And I think these rules need to be the Superman rules. Number one, he needs to be very hopeful. He needs to imbue this aurora of goodness, wholesomeness. It needs to harken back to what Christopher Reeves did with his Superman. Number two, I think in order for this Superman to really stand out, Lex Luthor should not be a part of the movie. I think it's time to introduce other villains from Superman's rogue gallery to really set him apart from his predecessors. And number three, I think journalism, the whole Clark Kent journalism side of things needs to be really elaborated, explored, and Metropolis as a whole needs to be really fleshed out. Since James Gunn wants to have a Superman that's already kind of active, I think the best way to go about it is this is a Superman that has yet to really face a challenge, that has really pushed him to use his powers. The movie should begin with Metropolis already having seen Superman sightings, but this is kind of like your friendly neighborhood Superman, where he's saving cats from trees, stopping local bank robberies, just kind of doing police detective work, trying to solve mysteries, crimes, and just using his powers for good, but also focus on Clark Kent having to live in a world where Superman exists as well, and he has to balance the secret identity. I think as a journalistic look into the movie, I think Perry White should make Clark actually try to investigate Superman. Try to see who this Superman character is and work closely with Lois Lane and Jimmy Olsen. I think Lois Lane should be scared of Superman, which is kind of a change from the comics, but it will do a nice contrast with Jimmy Olsen, who is going to idolize Superman and say he's the best thing ever, and Clark being kind of in the middle. He just dons the suit because he wants to help people, but he really wants to be a human. He doesn't want to be this god. He was given this gift. He just feels as though he needs to do something with it. While this is going on, while the investigation is going on, I think the movie's real villain should be the military itself, the governments, and the world. Because imagine this basically super god living among humans, but there's no way to stop him. There's no way known to man that would be able to stop Superman at this point in time. Which brings me to my next point. Who from the Rogues Gallery would be the best villain to actually face Superman? I think the best villain for this film would be Metallo. The way I would introduce Metallo to the world is, like I said earlier, the military, the governments of the world are scared of Superman. So they've been cooperating with one another, trying to find a power source that could potentially stop Superman, but without endangering mass people, thus excluding nuclear bombs and radiation, and looking for a source that could be more contained and specifically used just to bring down Superman. Since all the governments are cooperating together, all foreign military with the US, they find a source that they don't know what it is exactly yet, but we all know it's kryptonite. So then they would start Project Metallo. This is where we get the introduction of John Corbin, the original Metallo. He would volunteer himself and his body, and fast forward a little bit, he's awakened with a new heart that's basically made out of kryptonite, and he is super strong now and super powerful. Now, this is where the whole journalism aspect of the film would take place, since Lois Lane and Clark Kent are researching Superman. Lois Lane, through her contacts, because she's a very resourceful person, would get wind that the governments are working on some project to defeat Superman. Clark Kent, obviously being Superman, would get wind of this as well. Clark hearing these reports doesn't really concern him. So basically what happens is that Superman, Clark Kent, he wouldn't be scared. He's never felt pain in his life. He's still a little bit immature. He doesn't realize that there's bigger threats out there. But this is why I chose Metallo, because this could be the beginning of a more mature and resourceful Superman that realized that there are certain types of enemies that could actually hurt him, and would actually open his mind to the possibility that he's not so indestructible as he thought. So the way the first fight would go down would be that the military would send Metallo into Metropolis. They would fake a bank robbery of sorts. They would give tips to the media. Clark Kent, being a reporter, would get a tip that a big bank robbery was going to go down. Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, would be as well present at that scene. Metallo would walk in dressed like a normal bank robber, and of course Clark would be in a Superman outfit to stop the bank robbery, and that's where Metallo would activate his heart kryptonite and shoot a heart beam straight at Superman. Superman would feel wobbly for the first time ever in his life, a little bit sick. He wouldn't probably understand what these feelings are, and since kryptonite strengthened Metallo's body, he would be able to go and punch out Superman, making him bleed for the first time ever. So this Superman would be in shock because he's never experienced pain. He's never experienced this feeling. The world would be in shock. And Lois, for the first time ever, would feel actually pity for Superman, because she would realize that this once God has now bled like a man. Superman will try his best to stop Metallo in the first fight, but to no avail. Metallo isn't going to easily beat Superman, because Superman is extremely inexperienced at this point. And Superman, with no choice, as Metallo tries to finish him off, will find an inner strength, push him off, and fly away, setting up this Metallo that's going to feel emboldened, realizing that now he has taken down Superman, that now he is the bigger threat, the apex predator, and the world is his, basically. Now that Superman fled, Metallo will feel as though he has nothing left to conquer. The governments will be satisfied that they were able to bring down Superman, and that Metallo as a project was a success. But John Corbin as a person, because he has kryptonite flowing through his body, will become corrupt and start disobeying the world government. He would go back to Metropolis seeking out Superman so that he can have his last laugh and bring down Superman once and for all, killing him. Despite the world government's orders to stand down, Metallo will disobey the government. While this is occurring, Superman will be healing from his wounds. He will be back in his Clark Kent identity, afraid to put on the cape because he realizes that he's no longer the person he needs to be, the symbol of hope, the symbol that's undefeatable, the Man of Steel, because he's been defeated by an entity stronger than him, as so he thinks he'll have doubt as to what he is or who he is or what he thought he was. And this is where Lois, since now she pities Superman, now that she feels that Superman is more than just the man that flies through the city, will confront Clark Kent, putting two and two together, realizing that Clark Kent and Superman are one and the same, and they'll have a sit-down talk. And this is where it's a moment where Clark will start to understand what is humanity, because Lois will talk about her experiences in her life, what it means to feel pain, what it means to feel sad, and something that Clark, since he's just experienced for the first time ever, will realize that in order to overcome these things, he needs to rise above everything. He needs to be Superman. He needs to get up even though he feels down. And this would set up the second fight between Metallo versus Superman. Now, Metallo, again, will be in Metropolis. He'll get a hold of the media saying that he wants to bring down Superman in front of the world. He wants to bring down the Man of Steel. He wants to bring down a god, just like he had done before.